Hello, YouTube, and thank you for joining me, Morgan Freeman, for another story. This story is titled, One Motormouth Too Far. A furious Kenny Wallace climbed out of his destroyed Stacker 2 Dodge. He had been involved in a race-ending incident that had ruined a potential top 10 run for Bill Davis Racing. Once Kenny was out of his mangled number 23, he threw his helmet to the ground with an earth-shattering slam that echoed all around Texas Motor Speedway. His heap of twisted metal was set right at the mouth of Pit Road, and Kenny began the long march towards his hauler, shooing off medical and track personnel in his fury. "Get off me. I'm fine," he scolded as he walked. His rage only continued to boil as he watched the winner doing burnouts on the front stretch as their team awaited the spoils of victory. The only thing awaiting Kenny after today was a long team meeting on Monday and hours of bodywork on the Stacker 2 car. The constant hassle from the safety crew and the celebrating car on the front stretch finally hit a tipping point for Kenny, and suddenly something snapped inside his brain. The only thing he could think of now was finding a way to get back at the man who ended any potential his day had. His mind locked a target onto the face of one man, and one man only. It was the third week in a row that he had ended Kenny's race. Michael Waltrip, he whispered to himself while walking down the long pit road. Kenny Wallace, you had a great run going until the very last lap today when you and Michael Waltrip made contact. An animated Steve Burns postured to the seething Kenny Wallace as the two walked in stride down the pit lane with cameras and microphones surrounding the two. Is there anything that could have gone differently in that final corner? The only thing I want to say right now is Michael Waltrip better watch his back, because I am pissed, was all Kenny said before shoving his way past the camera crew and headed in the direction of his hauler. Kenny's anger continued stewing as he reached his Bill Davis Racing Team hauler. He stopped right before the door as something caught his attention out of the corner of his eye. His head made a sharp turn to the right, and with only a glance, he saw what he was looking for. His hauler was conveniently parked parallel to Michael Waltrip's RV, and right there in the window, none other than the man himself, Michael Waltrip, was peeking through the blinds. Right as the two were locked into a stare, Waltrip's eyes widened, and he disappeared behind the blinds. Kenny breathed a heavy sigh that did nothing to sate his anger, and he turned on his heel and marched right to Michael's RV. Kenny hammered on the door of the RV and waited with his arms folded. "There's no one home," a very nervous Michael Waltrip stammered from behind the door. "Open the damn door, Michael," Kenny hollered. "Don't make me have to open it myself." A few seconds passed before a quiet click came from the door, and it slowly began to open. The door creaked heavily as Michael gradually eased the door open. Kenny only grew more enraged from this, and before he could even see Michael, he pulled the door all the way open himself. Michael held his hands up defensively as the two locked eyes again. Kenny raised a finger right to Michael's face and began shouting. "Do you have any idea how much you just cost me and my team? What is wrong with you? Do you even have a brain? Who taught you how to drive? How hasn't Napa dropped your sorry ass yet?" Through the criticism, Michael could do nothing but continue holding his hands up and nodding along. By the time Kenny finished, Michael had no rebuttal. "I'm sorry, man. I just got loose," he muttered out to Kenny. "Oh, you got loose," Kenny shouted back as he took a step into Michael's RV. "You just got loose." Kenny continued pestering, and it wasn't long before he was entirely into Michael's RV. He had Michael pressed right up against the RV's refrigerator, leaving Mikey with no clear escape route. It wasn't long before Kenny's body was all but pressed against Michael's, with barely any room for air between the two. Kenny gave himself a second to catch his breath, and as he did, he noticed a warm sensation near his leg. He looked down to see his leg was pressed right against Michael's pants, which had been soaked from urine. Kenny held his gaze to the situation as he mocked Michael. "Looks like you've just made another mess, huh, Michael?" Michael was too scared to even react to Kenny's words and just stood there with his body pressed against the fridge. Kenny slowly drew his eyes up and locked them with Michael's, and drew himself closer with a devilish look on his face. "Well, it's pretty clear being nice with you wasn't ever going to teach you anything," Kenny told Michael in a deep and breathy tone. "I'm done playing good cop with you, Michael. You're going to learn this time." Before Michael had a chance to process this statement, Kenny was already clutching Michael's soaked pants in one hand, with Michael's shirt in the other. What are you doing?" Michael stuttered out before Kenny tightened his grip and began to further remove the Napa driver's clothes. Once Michael was down to only his Dale Jr. number 8 boxers, Kenny began loosening his driver suit. The fear in Michael's eyes never dissipated, and soon the two only had skin as separation. "You're going to learn today, Michael," was the last thing Kenny said before he penetrated Michael's slender rear end. Michael's eyes widened even more, and his mouth contorted into a mixture of pain and pleasure as Kenny's long shaft forced its way past his rectum. The move sent shockwaves through Michael's entire body, leaving him completely in Kenny's control. This continued for what felt like hours, as Kenny thrust repeatedly. Soon enough, Kenny couldn't tell if Michael's moans were from fear, pain, pleasure, or all of the above. He decided to switch things up in any case. Kenny threw Michael's defenseless body into the RV's bed, forcing his massive cock into Michael's huge, loud mouth. Michael struggled for breaths as the two shook the RV, nearly knocking Michael's 2 Daytona 500 trophies onto the floor. Once Kenny decided this act wasn't enough, he decided to jump straight into the grand finale. He flipped the tall man around and mounted from behind, slapping hard against Michael's defenseless ass. The duo's breathing became heavier and louder, and Kenny's thrust became more and more frequent. A sharp scream came from Michael as Kenny climaxed, coating the inside of Michael's lower intestine with righteous, indignant ejaculate. Kenny threw himself off of Michael and began gathering his clothing. There was a stunned silence coming from Michael as he lay in yet another mess. "You better not forget this, Michael," Kenny said as he regained his composure. "If you don't, I'll be back again." And with that, Kenny excused himself from Michael's RV and cheerfully strolled back in the direction of his hauler. He knew that one of two things would come from this little incident, one of which would be that he would never have to worry about Michael ruining another one of his races ever again. The other possibility was that he'd be getting wrecked out of every race from that day forward. Kenny wasn't really bothered by this scenario. Either worked for him. Thank you for joining me, Morgan Freeman, for another reading on the Kamikaze Games channel. Thanks for watching. Hit the join button.